Welcome everybody to today's Backpack to Briefcase series. Today's topic is following up with companies. We have many students who are networking and interviewing with companies right now, so we're really grateful to welcome Trevor Peterson from Tanner to guide us through this skill. A little bit about Tanner as a company. Tanner LLC is an independent public accounting firm. Tanner helps companies through strategic accounting, advisory services, and relationships. Professional services range from tax and assurance to succession planning. They have offices in Salt Lake City, and recently they've opened an office in Lehigh. A little bit about Trevor. Trevor has over 12 years of audit and business advisory experience in public accounting and is the newest audit partner at Tanner LLC. He works with companies in a variety of industries, including technology, construction, consumer products, and manufacturing. Prior to joining Tanner, Trevor graduated summa cum laude with his Bachelor of Arts in Accounting from Weber State University. He also received his Master's of Accountancy degree from Weber State, and upon graduation was honored with the Utah Association of Certified Public Accountants Outstanding Accounting Student Award. He is a member of the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Utah Association of Certified Public Accountants. Trevor and his wife, Krista, live in Farmington, Utah with their 5 awesome kids. As a family, they enjoy outdoor activities, especially skiing on the snow and on the water. So welcome, Trevor.
Thanks, Nate. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I'm a Weber State alum, as Nate mentioned. But I do have a few ties to Utah State. I have a couple of brother-in-laws that graduated from the school business up there. So happy to be here. And actually, because of COVID, we ended up canceling our California vacation last summer, and we went to Smithfield. So we had a great time, ate a lot of Aggie ice cream, and it's beautiful up there. So we had a great time. So my big family vacation was right there in Utah State. So. I thought it'd be helpful to maybe tell my story, and from that, hopefully we can get some ideas about following up with companies, how I got my job. I do a lot of recruiting for our firm, so I'm going to tell some experiences I've had there, the good, the bad, the ugly, and pull out some principles that might help you guys today as you go through this path and this journey of trying to start your careers. So. I started out at Weber State on a football scholarship, and I really enjoyed that. I did football for a couple of years, and then decided to stop playing and focus on school. And I knew I wanted to go into business, but I wasn't sure which area I'd want to go to, and had a really good professor that convinced me that accounting would be a good way. And after I took my first accounting class, I liked it. It seemed to click for me. And so I decided that would be, a good profession. And then I really started to like accounting. In accounting, we have an event called Meet the Firms every year. So all the firms from the state come, and the students are able to go and meet them. It's a big career fair. And that's probably when I thought, wow, this is kind of cool. Here's all these companies coming to me and asking me, to come work for them. So I went to my first Meet the Firms event, not really knowing what to expect, and walked away with, my eyes were open to this whole world of recruiting. And at the time, I came out of school at a time when firms were fighting for people. And so it was a pretty competitive market between the firms. So as a student, you kind of felt like you were pretty important, pretty special. I know every year is a little different. The pendulum seems to swing between, the firms get to be picky, and then this, from the students. And I was in an era where, I got to be pretty selective. And so as I went through the process, I like I said, my first exposure was Meet the Firms, and got to know a few of the firms, started doing a little bit of research on those, and kind of narrowed it down to some of the national firms, and then Tanner, which is a local firm I hadn't really heard much about. But I got an email that they were having what they call a Jumpstart conference. It was a leadership conference that they were having. And one of the professor that kind of was my mentor said, hey, this would be a really good experience, whether you go with Tanner or not, this would look good on your resume. And so, I remember putting together a cover letter and a resume. And up to this point, I really hadn't done that. And I remember spending a lot of time on a cover letter. And I laugh now because I don't think I've ever read a cover letter of the students. So, that's me. I'm sure other people read them, but that's me. But anyway, I spent a lot of time on that, a lot of effort there. And then but the most important thing I did is I went to this professor and I said, hey, do you know anyone at Tanner? And he said, yeah, I've got some contacts there. And I said, well, would you mind just calling them and recommending me for this position? And I went to I had a good relationship with our career counselor at that time. And I went to her and I asked her to do the same thing. And she says, oh yeah, I know the managing partner really well. And so I had two people who called and recommended me for this leadership conference. And so I was able to get into the conference, and I think it had nothing to do with my beautiful cover letter or my resume. I think it had everything to do with the recommendations that I got. And I did a similar thing with Ernst & Young, which is a national firm, and PwC, which is a national firm. They had summer leadership conferences. So I went through these conferences and, got to know these firms, got to know the people. And, you'll find as you go with these different companies, you'll connect with certain people. And so with those individuals I connected with, I was deliberate about following up with them. So I would, and you need to understand timeline. I'm going to talk about this a little more later on in my presentation, but the conference for Tanner was in May. And so in June, I reached back out to the individual that I had contacted, and I just asked if we could go to lunch because I wanted to learn more about the firm. And so he said yes, and then he brought a partner that was over the recruiting for Weber State, got to know them, and then from there found out, okay, well, the interviews happened in the fall, and followed up again with them in early August. At that point, they actually asked me to come in before the formal interview process. I was able to go through a round of interviews and got my offer before the recruiting season even started. So to me, it worked out really well. My contacts at the other firms were kind of upset, actually, that they felt like Tanner maybe cheated the process a little bit by giving me an offer before the formal recruiting. But I didn't care. I got the offer that I wanted. So and so from there, I started at Tanner, and I've been at Tanner ever since. And so I'm kind of a unique situation. I think I remember coming out of school, they said statistically, most people have probably work for 7 different companies. I don't know, Nate, if that's still a pretty accurate statistic. But I'm, I've spent my whole career with one, and I just got promoted to partner, so I don't plan on leaving anytime soon. So I could be one of the unique ones here that ends up spending my whole career. So, I'm in accounting, so I'm going to be talking specifically accounting, but these principles apply whether you're, in any of these different fields. The events may be called different things, but there's all similar type of events out there for any of these business schools. So I think the tips that I can give you is, number one, be involved. So go to the events. You probably get a lot of emails and a lot of things, and you're busy and you have school and things going on. And COVID's made it even harder with all this going on, but find a way to be involved and go to those events. If I look back on my experience, if I didn't go to meet the firms, if I didn't go to the leadership conferences, there's no way I'd get a job, right? And I had a high grade point average, but it wouldn't have mattered because they wouldn't have known who I was. And so it's really important to be involved, to go to those events, and be involved with the different groups, the Beta Alpha Psi and different organizations within the school of business, because that's where I got to know the professors, got to know the career counselors that allowed me to, they knew me well enough to be comfortable to give me a recommendation. And that's really important. When you go to these events, you need to find a way to make yourself memorable. And memorable in a good way, not memorable in an awkward way. Because there's the awkward memorable and there's the good memorable. And I think the key is just being yourself and find a way to, tell your story that's intriguing. Everyone has a story. Everyone has something about them that's unique and different. For me, it's usually, when I say things like, when you walk away, you'll probably remember that I played football at Weber State. That was something really small I said, but usually that's what people take away is that, oh, he started at Weber on a football scholarship. So I find a way to weave that in a natural conversation, not that I'm being showy or trying to say, look how great I am. But when people, ask me, when I was going through recruiting, they would say, tell me about yourself. And I would lead in with something like that of, hey, well, I started here at Weber State and I chose Weber State because I got a football scholarship. I wasn't good enough to play at BYU or Utah State. So I ended up Weber. But those type of things stick, right? Those things stick. So think about that and then practice. I know, Nate mentioned there's a mock interviews coming up. Those are opportunities to practice and get feedback and hone your skills. And practice in front of the mirror. I know it's awkward, but practice saying those things and be comfortable saying those things. It will come out a lot more natural. And it doesn't have to be sports. And there's things about you that are unique and make yourself memorable. Because you got to remember going to, especially when you're at like a career fair, you're going to be meeting and interacting with hundreds of students sometimes, and you want them to remember you. So have that good conversation, find a way to naturally do that. If you don't feel like you're very personal and you have struggled with conversation, you're gonna have to practice a lot harder. I have no problem talking, as you'll see on this call. So for me, I didn't have to practice very much. But I did practice, but it wasn't like, for me, it was in my comfort zone. If it's something that doesn't come natural for you, then you're going to have to practice a little harder. And, when I talk about, I think about when I meet people at these events, and I kind of remember the ones that we connect with, have really good conversation. They can carry the conversation well. Even though I'm a talker, when I go to these events, I try to step back and I want to see and I try to allow these students to talk. And it can be really awkward sometimes as I allow them to, try to carry these conversations.
Hey,
yeah.
I have a couple questions.
You bet.
One, you talked about just some of your advice about getting involved, and going to all these activities and these events. Students are working full-time, working part-time. What advice do you have about making time to do some of these events?
So I get that question a lot. So I would say, remember why you're in school, right? So you're in school to learn, to get a degree, to get a job, in my opinion, right? So you're going to the business school, you want to graduate, you want to get a job. So do your very, very best to arrange your schedule. Now, if there's an event, let's say a firm has an open house or some sort of event that you can't attend, then be proactive and take that as an opportunity and reach out to an individual firm and say, hey, I've got this conflict, but I would sure love to meet with you. Could I come down and have lunch with you sometime? So be proactive and don't give yourself an out just because maybe you really can't make that event. I would say do your best to make it, but if you can't, use it as an excuse to interact with these companies that you want and just say, hey, I couldn't make it to the career fair, but I am so interested in your company. Could I come and talk to you for 15 minutes in your office? Right? And it's going to take some effort on your part because you got to make it easy for them. They're not going to come back up to Logan, unless they have another event. But so I would say, we run into this a lot at Weber because there's a lot of working students, and especially the last couple of years, it's been kind of frustrating because the attendance has been really low at the different events. And I I think, man, these students aren't getting it. They're not, they're missing the point. I mean, school's obviously really important. Your current job is important, but I don't think you want to keep that current job very long. So, do your best to work out your schedule.
That's great. And another question, you'd said that it's easy for you to kind of reach out, talk to these people, set up these lunches. That's probably the hardest skill that our students face, is really getting out of their comfort zone to spark those interactions. To reach out to a partner, to reach out to someone like that is really scary. What advice do you have about that?
Well, one is, we're not as scary as you think. So most people are just normal people, right? And as businesses and companies, you got to understand that they want good people, and so you're important to them. And I would say maybe a couple of tips on that would be, pick the kind of the communication style that's going to be best for you. So maybe it's email, or maybe it's picking up the phone. For me, I like picking up the phone. I like talking to people. Other people prefer email. And then practice. Find somebody that you trust that would, whether it be someone in your family or a friend that's in the business world, and just say, hey, I know this seems really weird, but I need to reach out to this company and really want to get a job there. Could I tell you what I'm going to say, and you tell me if it just sounds totally ridiculous, right? And so practice, and practice, and then it'll come off. Even now as a partner, I read my emails and reread my emails multiple times before I send them to my clients, because I want to make sure that the message I'm sending is clear. And so when you're gonna, if you're gonna send an email to this, to an individual, the company, you should have somebody else look at it and just proof it. Just make sure that the message is coming across in a way that, that's respectful and positive. And I think that's two things that are really important: is your communications. You want them to be positive. You want to be respectful in those. Nate, you want me to keep going on the different points, or we have more questions?
Well, just kind of a follow-up question that we have is, who do you know, how do you know who to reach out to? Mm-hmm. There's usually so many people in a firm or a company. How do you know who to reach out to?
Great question. So that actually leads out really well into my next recommendation. So, first was attend. Second was be memorable in a good way. And then the third one is find others to recommend you. So this is the way you could find out who to go to. You can start with your professors. You start with your career counselors to see if they have any contacts at these companies and who they would recommend that you reach out to. And then ask them, say, hey, I'm going to reach out, but would you mind also sending a message and letting them know that they ought to talk to me? And so use those recommendations. And then if they don't know, use LinkedIn. So there's a lot of power in LinkedIn. You can find connections through LinkedIn and find ways you're connected to individuals. And then, you may be, a second connection to somebody at this company. Will reach out to your connection and have them, have them give a recommendation for you. And I think there's a lot of power in that, because if I go back to my story, I got that leadership conference because I was recommended. And so, and if you don't know who it is, sometimes they'll post who's doing the interviews, so it's easier. But yeah, use LinkedIn and use those contacts to try to get a good recommendation in there. And there's a lot more power in that than just, kind of a random email. So, and I will say, you can also, if it's a lot of times with these different events, they'll list who either is going to attend or has attended. And so even if you don't have a contact to them, you can say, hey, I know you were at the career fair. I'm sorry that I missed it. I had I tried everything I could, but I couldn't make it. But I would really love to, come and meet you and at least have, 10 minutes of your time if you can spare it. So that'd be my recommendation there. And then follow up. So Nate, was there any more questions? Do you want me to move on? Okay. So follow up. So I think the key to good follow up is during the process. So in all your interactions, you want to ask good questions surrounding, help me understand the interview process. Help me understand what I can expect as I'm going through this. And as you do that, you need to listen and you need to remember those things and then make a plan accordingly. So, if as you go and you're interacting with these companies, they may say, hey, what does the interview process look like? Do you have any advice for me as I go through this process? And so a lot of times they'll say, yes, so we're going to have interviews in a month. And you're like, okay, great. So you've got a little bit of information there. And you say, okay, well, if I have a month, I want, and it's kind of, these are general guidelines, but I would say, if it's a month gap, you'd want at least one touch point in between your initial, and then when you submit your resume and you're going out, I would say, at least one touch point if it's a 1 to 2 month gap. Sometimes it's longer. Sometimes it's like, okay, well, we're in the spring and we're not going to be doing it until the fall. So it's 3 to 6 months. I would say, be creative and find 2 good ways to have contacts with these companies. One could be just an email check-in. Think of a question. I know some of the really good students that I've had are really creative with, they'll say, hey, I've got this project for school, and do you have any clients in this industry? Because they're really good at just finding ways to get in front of people, much better than I was. But those are just, be creative in their ways to be them, and just, hey, or if you're going to be by their office, or you're going to make yourself be by their office, say, hey, on next week, I'm going to actually be down by your office. And they don't need to know that you're only going to be down there just to see them. But, and say, hey, would you mind if I just stopped by and said hi? And be proactive. I know these things seem really scary and they're really busy. And if it doesn't work for them, they'll tell you, how that doesn't work. Maybe we can do a different day. But that's okay. But that's a touch point, right? That's something memorable. And so as your resume comes through, they're going to remember, oh, this person's really interested. We ought to make sure we talk to them. But find a way to do those touch points. Find a way to reach out outside of the normal, the normal flow of things, so you're not caught with everyone else. I will say, so anytime you have interaction, like an initial interaction, whether it be at like a career fair or, I'll start there. So at those events, if somebody tells you, hey, like, here's my card, love to talk to you more, that's probably a good indication that they're interested in you. Because I don't do that with everyone, and I don't think everyone else does. And so if you get that from someone, or even if you don't, if you're just, you feel like you really like this company, follow up within 24 hours with just a quick message. Hey, thanks. It was really nice to meet you. And then re-emphasize that memorable thing, right? So it was nice to learn about your family. Like I had a really good interview recently with a student at BYU that there was a couple memorable. Initially, what was memorable about him is he had a pretty sweet bowl cut and a mustache. And as I got to know him more, he's a big skier, and so we talked skiing for like probably 20 minutes of a half-hour interview, and he followed up the next within 24 hours and sent me an email and said, hey, it was really awesome to talk skiing with you. Thanks for your time. It's just a really brief note. But now I remember, like, oh, he's the one that we were talking about with skiing. So kind of, those conversations you have are important, and those points that make it memorable. Or, hey, it was really nice to learn about the clients that you work with, or learn about your company, and, say something specific about the company that you liked, that stood out to you. And that will show them, one, that, hey, this person is paying attention, they're proactive.
So one question that we have about that. So let's say we have, like we mentioned, we have this mock interview day coming up. They just meet with you. You have a good interaction. Is it do you recommend students having like their own business cards, or is it easier for a student to just connect on LinkedIn or email? Do you have a preference or a recommendation?
I'd say email. I'd say send them an email. I would. I get a lot of LinkedIn invites, to be honest, and so like it's fine to connect, and I'll connect with students on LinkedIn. But I would say the ones that are most impactful for me are email, and where it's just a little note. I will tell you one. If you want an awkward story, the and this was one where you could tell like the person had been coached. Say, hey, you got to follow up and send a handwritten note. In my opinion, the handwritten notes kind of going away. It's not that special to me, and most people's handwriting's really bad. But so I was at Weaver State, and I had interviews all day. And so I interviewed this individual. The interview didn't go great. And then the individual walked back in literally after my next interview. So it was 20 minutes later, and handed me a piece of paper and said, "Thank you." And I was like, what? And he had like, I think he had already written before, but he had like written out like, thanks for your time for the interview. And I'm thinking like, so there's like some like that was bad follow-up, right? I mean, 20 minutes after, like that to me was like, okay, this guy's awkward. Like he's off the list for sure. So you got to use a little bit. I use the analogy of it's a little bit like dating, where there's like this fine line of like, you don't want to look too eager, but you got to make sure they know you're interested. So I use the dating analogy a lot but you can think of it like that, especially on the follow-up side of, how long do you wait to come back and do those things? But I think within, if, the next day, I think within 24 hours is a good rule, but probably not within 2 hours. So somewhere in that window is probably a good window to do. Yeah, I think maybe just to summarize, Nate, I think asking good questions during the process is really important, because if you understand what what the interview process is going to look like, that will allow you to make a plan to to make sure that, okay, this is when I want to touch base with them, this is what I want to do. If you don't ask those questions, then there's a lot of guesswork, right? But if they kind of tell you, hey, this is the process, this is what you can expect, it's okay to follow up on those things. So if you have an interview, and you should always ask the interview, okay, when can I expect to hear back from you? And they say a week. And if a week comes and you haven't heard anything, just find a way to respectfully follow up and understand people are busy, right? And so, and in all your communications, I'd be very positive and very respectful to their time, and understand that they've got a lot going on outside of just the recruiting. So.
Well, that was awesome. I was taking notes myself. This is great advice for our students, especially with an event coming up. So thank you, Trevor. We appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to come and share your wisdom with all of us. And like I said, you'll be recorded on YouTube and immortalized throughout.
This is my first YouTube video. I'm really excited about this.
So thank you again.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Nate.